Mr. Shota Dighmelashvili, leader of the New People's Movement, welcome to GTN View.
Thank you for inviting me.
So far, the ruling party hasn't considered accepting your proposal. What's going to be the next step of the People's Movement if Prime Minister Dighmelashvili would not resign before the July 3rd?
We've been in this situation before. We had to do a 100-day consecutive protest in order to achieve our demand, which was the amendment of the constitution to the proportional elections. Non-violence is main religion for us. It's not only idealistic choice, but also pragmatic, because it's more inclusive, first of all, and it does not give propaganda an upper hand to paint you as a radical. Well, they do develop this narrative, but we need to make it harder for them to picture us as some radicals with groundless demands. But the demand we placed, first of all, the proportional elections, which is up to date. We got the promise from the shadow ruler himself 3 years ago. And then the international community also got the promise from him and from the president Zurabishvili as well, while she was traveling around. But still, we don't have the system we demanded and system that was promised. So, but we'll continue to push for the issues which will make our country more democratic. The Western integration is even embedded in our constitution. So those two narratives come in line and are overlapping each other. So we're pushing that direction every way we can.
If I'm not mistaken, you said that forming the government with a national concert will fulfill the depolarization and the oligarchization demands from the EU. But what's the meaning of forming new government if most of the demands are related to the parliament?
The government, you mentioned it quite right, it's consensual. So we are leaving some space for discussion there. So that's why we are not proposing the exact models, practical models, but we could imagine one of those models as like having 3 delegates from the civic society, from respected international NGOs, for example, and 3 delegates from the opposition and 3 delegates from the ruling party sitting together and with full consensus, like cherry picking the professionals who could head the various directions in the government. You're quite right that then the parliament would need to prove the amendments put forth by the government. But in Georgian context, we see what the parliament is. It's more than a notary bureau, than the place for discussions. There's always the risk that Georgian Dream will promise you something, and then they will not do it. But what else could we propose? What we see in the rallies, they were the biggest after 9th of April rallies. That means that there's a huge public demand for the ruling party to compromise. And we hope that the internal pressure and the external pressure and the agreement and the consensus might be the best way out of the crisis.
This year, President Zurabishvili visited several European countries to convince our partners to give us the EU candidacy status, but the ruling party was not so satisfied with her independent diplomacy. If this so-called People's Movement managed to form new government, will you support Madam President to continue her diplomatic mission?
When the civic society organizes a rally, it's the maximum the civil society can do, because we don't have any more leverages. But the president does. The president can pardon anyone. President can veto the laws which he criticized. The justice system was one of the problems mentioned in these 12 points proposed by the European Union, and she could interfere there as well. So what we see, civic society does its maximum, like the biggest rally Georgia has ever seen, one of the biggest rallies, while we see the president rhetorically supporting the consolidation, Euro integration, but not doing her best. Okay, she can plan some visits, and we like fully support those visits, and we even invited her to our rally. We even had her on our Ukraine solidarity rallies. We are really open. Like, we'd like her to take initiative and do as much as she can to push the agenda of Euro integration and agenda of depolarization.
But you expect more.
But we expect more, and we see that she does not. She does not use all the leverages she has. So here we are like a bit skeptic about her initiatives and about her role. But we'd like to see her doing more for the cause.
Thanks to you and your friends, on the 20th of June, Georgia had the biggest pro-European rally, not just one of the biggest. This date wasn't chosen by accident. The 20th of June is related to former Prime Minister Giorgi Gaharea, who is currently in the opposition. May we see you, and once your enemy, Gaharea and his party, standing next to you.
Giorgi Gaharea by then was Minister of Interior Affairs. Why we then demanded his resignation? Because this bloody crackdown where like up to 50 journalists were hurt and people lost their eyes because the special forces were deliberately performing headshots with the rubber bullets, which are prohibited to be used on people. 20th June of the protest was against the Georgian government, and then Gaharea reacted the way he reacted. And that's why we came up with the demand of his resignation. But the main demand was the proportional elections. We addressed each and every political parties very clearly. We said that, okay, if you join the demands, like, we have no right to say that, okay, you cannot join our demands, but the rally is run by the civil society, like civil society organizations and people representing the civil society. And we don't want to see any active politicians in the national unity government as well. They should be like chosen from the civic society. If some supporters of Gaharea come to the rally, like we are not cherry picking who comes, like other opposition parties also come, and we wish for the supporters of Georgian Dream to come there as well. And actually we're seeing them coming to the rally, but they neither of them have a place on the stage.
For years you've been screaming out loud that Georgia has an oligarch and he has to be removed. But before 2022, our European partners never mentioned Dighmelashvili in any of their resolutions. How do you think? Why didn't they listen to you before?
We didn't scream loud enough, maybe. So, the situation in Ukraine has crystallized like lots of things and lots of problems and lots of positions. What we used to see within the Europe and also the West in general sense was the policy of appeasement towards Russia, no matter what atrocities they have committed. But now it's changing. Europe has united. It's united. Also, NATO has reinvented itself, and Europe is united like never. So.
You consider this as a reason why they came back to Dighmelashvili?
One of the reasons.
What's the other?
He is the Russian oligarch, right? He has gained all his fortune in Russia and then bought a country for himself to keep his assets safe. And now it's perceived as bigger problem in West, I think, because security framework in the region is changing. And lots of things are changing in the attitudes of the West. And I think that's a huge contributor why they started to view the shadow ruler we're having right now as an oligarch, as a person he is.
Mr. Shota Dighmelashvili, thank you for this interesting interview.
Thank you for interesting questions.